Hello, this is a recording of the final synchronous session for Physics 71.1, which is on the summary report of Experiment 7, the simple pendulum. So this is the last requirement for the course. So first, let's go through the course guide to look at some general guidelines regarding this summary report. So if we scroll down a bit, we will see the summary requirements, summary course requirements. So students are required to make a summary report of the simple pendulum experiment. So that's your experiment 7, which you should have done last week. The summary report must contain different sections like title, abstract, introduction, results, discussion, and conclusion. And as opposed to your worksheet this time, this summary report is entirely in paragraph form. So it's not just a simple showing of your data, but rather it's discussing it in terms of an article. So since we require a summary report, the final experiment will not require a worksheet for submission. So this summary report is 20% of your final grade. And if you were wondering, just for comparison, experiments 1 to 6 comprise 80% in total of your grade. So 80% divided by 6 is around 13%. So bawat experiment ay 13% ng grade. So medyo mas matimbang yung summary report. Okay, so now if we scroll down a bit more, so here we will have some general guidelines for our summary report. So the summary report is typewritten on an A4 size paper with Times New Roman size 11 for the font size. So preferably, there will be a template provided for the summary report, which is Inovle, pero I can also upload it to the Discord server later today. On the off chance that you're not able to type, I will accept handwritten summary reports, provided that the summary report is legible or readable. However, I don't think any of you will have this problem. So the summary report must not exceed 3 pages. So maybe in opposition to whatever essays you have written in high school or elementary school, ang summary report ay may maximum page count and not minimum, which means you will not have to artificially extend your paragraphs and statements para lang humaba ang work nyo. This means that all of your statements that you will be making in the summary report have to be short and concise, which means that we will have to work on that in this workshop. So just as a note, if your summary report exceeds 3 pages, I will have to deduct 25% of the maximum grade that you will get. So not just your maximum grade here. So depende rin sa page count nyo, not just on the quality of your work. Okay, so it's highly recommended that you assign a group editor to write your papers kasi this will make all the information in your paper consistent. If both or the three of you are writing your paper na iba-ibang section, chances are some sections will be very disjointed. As in halata talaga pag magkakaibang tao nagsulat. Pangit ang labas nun. So dapat may editor ang paper para siya ang mag-correct, siya ang mag-check, and maybe possibly rewrite some parts to make sure that the entire paper is coherent. So, and lastly, for the summary report guides, pinaka-importante rin, please do not plagiarize anything and please cite your sources. Again, as I have mentioned in the start of the semester, any form of plagiarism will be subject to extreme punishment such as expulsion from the university. I don't want any of you guys to encounter that, kaya please avoid this as much as possible. Di bali nang mababa ang score kesa yung ma-expel from the university. So let's scroll down a bit here to see if may information pa ako na-miss. So mukhang wala naman na. Okay, so now let's go to the summary report guidelines. So this is a general guide on how you will write your summary report. Okay, so let's first read this statement. The secret of good writing is to strip every sentence to its cleanest components. Every word that serves no function, every long word that could be a short word, these are the 1,001 adulterants that weaken the strength of a sentence. So the point of this statement is that in technical writing, less is more. So we can demonstrate this by using the following examples. So for example, take this statement. This paper provides a review of the basic tenets of cancer biology study design, using as examples studies that illustrate the methodologic challenges or that demonstrate successful solutions to the difficulties inherent in biological research. If you think that this statement is a mouthful, that's because it is. So how would we write this statement more effectively? Well, what we can do is cut unnecessary words and phrases. So these are the ones highlighted in red. Excuse me. So as for the purple one, we can avoid lengthy words that can be replaced with simpler ones. So using these two methods, we can rewrite the statement above as this paper reviews cancer biology study design using examples that illustrate specific challenges and solutions. So it's straight to the point. So it cuts out these unnecessary statements. And it's a lot easier to read, and it's not a mouthful. So another example, as it is well known, increased athletic activity has been related to a profile of lower cardiovascular risk, lower blood pressure levels, and improved muscular and cardiorespiratory performance. So ito, hindi siya kasing haba ng previous sentence pero medyo nakakahilo pa rin siyang basahin. So how would you write this? So yan, unang-una, itong statement na as it is well known, is not necessary. This is an unnecessary phrase, a profile of, and itong entire phrase na to, muscular and cardiorespiratory performance, was replaced with a single word. So, yung rewritten version ng statement na ito ay increased athletic activity is associated with lower cardiovascular risk, lower blood pressure, and improved fitness. So, kahit tanggalin nyo yung actual act of rewriting the two statements, if you would compare the two, mas madaling intindihin itong statement na ito na written, especially for me who is not a fitness expert. So now let's discuss the parts of a summary report. So kanina, I told you guys, ang standard parts ng summary report ay ang introduction, abstract, results and discussion, conclusion, and references. So let's discuss these parts of their summary report one by one. So unang-una yung title. So yung title, ang pinaka-importanting phrase sa isang document, which includes your summary report. The title will tell readers, so everybody else na wala sa grupo ninyo, what your document is. Kung hindi exact or clear yung title nyo, it's not gonna get readers. It's not going to get anybody's attention. So one tip for writing a good title is make it specific. Ano bang hinahanap ng paper na ito? So next is your abstract. The abstract should reflect all the parts of the paper but in shortened form. Through reading the abstract, the reader should be able to understand why you conducted the study, how you did it, what you found, and why your study is important. So basically, your abstract is a short summary of what the experiment is about and what key results you have determined. So from here, let's pause muna to show you guys the template of the summary report. So yung summary report template ninyo ay presented in this document. So dito, pwede nyo rin tignan. So everything is in paragraph form and we can look at it in more detail per section. So kanina, we had your title. So this will be your title. So I don't want a simple title like Halimbawa, experiment 7, free fall. No, I don't want that. That's not gonna take anyone's attention. It has to be a statement. So for example, a demonstration of the simple pendulum and how it relates to gravitational forces. This is just an example of what you can do as a title. Or more directly, pwede nating i-rewrite pa ito. Demonstrating some the effects of different factors in the oscillation of a simple pendulum. So those are just some examples of titles. Okay, so after that, so sa abstract again, dito yung 4 key points nyo. So yung abstract nyo is basically a brief description of the experiment done and a short summary of the key results of the work. So normally the abstract does not have to be long. Usual ay number of words 100 to 150. Mukhang madami yan pero actually hindi. I think 100 to 150 lines is about maybe 5 to 6 lines of dito sa abstract section. Tapos, keywords. So these are just identifiers sa kung anong mga tingin yung keywords na kailangan yung ilagay para ma-describe fully yung experiment. So, dito naman, under the title, you have your author titles. The authors are your group members. Hindi ako kasama. And the superscript with each member of the group is an affiliation. The institute and university where the student is affiliated with. So for example, si number 1 affiliated to NIP, National Institute of Physics. So UP Diliman, while si number 2 naman affiliated sa Institute of Mathematics. So may magkaibang superscript na naka-append dun sa pangalan ng tao. So normally, if you will write the address of UP, it is customary to write it in this way. So, institute nyo, University of the Philippines, lagay nyo, Diliman. Next is Quezon City. Tapos normally, nilalagay ang area code ng city. So, for the case of Diliman, it is 1101. So, next here, corresponding author, this is any one of your group members. Normally, it's the first author or the editor. Note na hindi email ko ang ilalagay niyo dyan. Okay, so before we discuss the rest of these sections, summary report, template, let's go back to the general guidelines. So, next is your introduction. The introduction is a short section that discusses the background concepts na relevant sa experiment niyo and may involve the relevant equations used para dun sa buong equation. So this must state the purpose of doing the activity. So bakit ba ginawa ang experiment na to? What is the point of doing the experiment? So actually, based on your data, you can even actually tell what is the problem that you are trying to solve here. What are the previous ways to solve the problem? How do you solve it? So what is the method that you use in the summary report? So yung mga bagay na yan, makikita niyo naman doon sa mga ginawa niyong worksheet. Actually, yung questions ng worksheet can also help you in further understanding the problem that is being discussed by the experiment itself. Again, it's not just a simple measurement of the symbol pendulum, but rather the simple pendulum is merely a means to solve some other problem. So next, the results and discussion. So just like with any experiment, present your results with neat graphs and tables. So please make your data neat. Para naman, madaling basahin ng kahit sinong hindi part ng grupo ninyo. So significant figures, alam niyo naman na yan. Tapos, show how conclusive the results are and account for all sources of error. So not just list them down, naka-paragraph form din yan. So lastly, yung conclusion, restate your main results and answer if your objectives were met and maybe possible recommendations on how to improve the experiment. This one is optional. You don't really need to put this, lalo na baka di nyo rin alam. But if you have ideas, you can put them there, of course. Just lastly, figures and tables. So sa figures, we've discussed this previously sa experiment 3 and it looks like all of you have understood it correctly naman, how to display your data properly. So wala naman tayong problema dyan. So next, let's go to the rubric. So the summary report rubric is a guide for me on how I will score your paper. So for each section, I have a given score with a maximum of 3 for a perfect score for each section. And this describes kung anong kailangan kong makita para ma-perfect kayo sa inyong paper. Well, at least per section. So for example, for the abstract, which is a summary of the paper in the experiment, a perfect score would be given if the abstract correctly reflects the experiment with no missing parts. So yun. Let's take another example. So sa graphs, yun. How would I give you perfect scores for your graphs? Well, if your graphs are neat and easy to read, understandable, with proper labeling and all the correct elements, basically your score will be perfect for the graphs. So I'm not gonna expand on every section here kasi this is more for me and not for you. Pero you can also use this as a additional guide to yourselves of how you will make sure that you have a high score. So you will also have a set of element checklist to tell if your sections are properly written. So now let's discuss the summary report template. So from here, we've already discussed that to the abstract section. Tapos kita nyo, naka-itemize na ang bawat section dito. So you have your introduction, results and discussion, and conclusion. Your conclusion should be somewhere here. We can write this, let's say may ganito. Yan, 3 conclusion. Let's go back here. Let's read this content. So, this is an MS Word template for articles submitted to a conference, SPP. It's a physics conference held annually in different locations in the Philippines. So, puro physics people yung mga nandyan. So, it's a event that shows the different data from various experiments done by many physics groups across the country. So anyway, so dito, We strongly encourage the use of LaTeX format to facilitate faster publication process. Huwag nyo na lang pansinin ito for now kasi most likely you guys do not know LaTeX. So it's good that pwedeng Word lang naman ang gamitin niyo to do the entire summary report. So no problem there. So again, dito naman, so leading paragraphs are not indented, and as I stated earlier, A4 size with 1-column format ang paragraphs nyo. So ang 1-column format is ito. It's already in the template. So itong margins are already set up for you. So basically yung mga font sizes, all you have to do is really rewrite yung mga nandiyo sa template na. Kasi tama na tong nakaset na to ng tama eh. So you can read this, pero yung mga importante na note ko dito is, so for example, yung figures. So yung mga i-discuss ko, so the figures should be presented as visible and readable, especially for axis labels and markers. Ibig sabihin nito, when you are representing your graphs in your paper, it should be easily readable and identifiable. So what does this mean? Normally, mas maganda na you have large figures. So for example, ito masyadong maliit to. Pero yung lakihan to in a way na madaling mabasa ang laman ng inyong graphs. So when you do this, make sure you don't stretch images. You want to maintain good quality para hindi siya malabo. So dito sa figure na to, you have figure captions, which means you don't have to do titles. Okay, and for equations, it's normally customary to number them and align the equation itself to the center. So these are some examples of equations that you can use. So naka-number equations. So for example, may tatlo ko dito, dapat 1, 2, 3 yan. Para tuloy-tuloy yung pagbasa. Tapos next is tables. So may format na dito ang table. You can also create your own table using your table tool here. Kung kulang yung rows and columns na na ilalagay nyo. Although pag nandito kayo, you can edit this table manually using Excel or using Word rather. Tapos of course, just like with your figure, merong caption din ng table. So lastly, when we talk about summary reports, normally if you're going to have your background concepts, you have to cite where you got these from. So these are your references, which are sa last section ng paper nyo. So when you cite papers, at the point of citation, designate the reference by typing the number in after the last corresponding word. So what are some valid references? So normally, especially in this era of misinformation and fake news, dapat may reliable sources tayo. So what are these reliable sources? So one, these are journal articles. So mga scientific publications ito. You also have archive preprints, which are just scientific articles na wala pa sa journal. Books. So ito, importante. You can actually use your Physics 71 OpenStax source for this. Conference proceedings. Pwede rin. You can also use physics-oriented websites na reliable. So there's a proper format for citing references, which I think you should already have an idea on the very least. Pero normally, halimbawa, if Mag-cite kayo ng article. Ganito yung format. For preprint, for a web, for a book, and conference, ito. Okay, now that we have discussed everything, lastly, I want to show you an example of a summary report done by a previous class over the past years. So ito pwede nyo rin gamitin as another template. So this is already checked. So let's look at these elements. So tingnan nyo yung title nila. So yung experiment na ginawa nila ng data is the third experiment, which is on free fall, yung may picket fence. So yun yung ginawa nila ng summary report. So look at their title. Study of acceleration due to gravity using the Vernier graphical analysis for software. So this title is okay. So again, it's not just a simple title na experiment 3, experiment 2. So it's not like that. May description siya about what the experiment is about. So these authors are from the Institute of Mathematics. I blacked out their names as well as the name of the corresponding author, which they mistakenly put as the professor for privacy. So now let's look at the abstract. So again, the abstract is a short statement about the general experiment. So yun yung abstract nila. They already discussed the point of the experiment, which is free fall and gravity. So nag-focus doon sa gravity yung kanilang abstract as a general statement. So if we read, gravity is a natural force that is affecting every single organism in our universe. So blah, 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 incorrect ito. So checkan ko rin yung accuracy, of course, ng statements nyo. Let's look at the next section. The study was conducted to observe how gravity alone affects falling objects. So isn't that the point of the free fall experiment? So yun yung ano niya, yun yung point. Sabi nila. So again, a brief description din ng ginawa. The study was conducted with the use of a photo gate and picket fence, and 3 trials were conducted. You can use the manual for experiment 7 to look at the way how this was done. Pero although you have already done it yourself, you should already know this. So the data gathered showed a velocity time and position time graph. The calculated gravitational acceleration was close to the actual value with a best estimate of 9.7 meters per second squared. So this showed that the acceleration will be close to the actual value of gravity. So yun. So this is how they did their abstract. So sa introduction, so una-una, nalagay siya ng general statement about gravity. So what is gravity? So general description. So gravity governed by the interactions of planets and stars. So on Earth, it has a value of 9.81. So fix niyo yung format. Ayaw namin ng ganyan. Gawin niyo lang na plain na isang line yung mga fractions na yan. So be careful lang when writing your equations. So naggawa siya ng equations here, center aligned and numbered properly. So now nagpunta siya sa discussion on the experiment and how it was done or what its point was. So this experiment has a few assumptions din na sinulat nila. So look how they cited their papers. So after the statement, may bracket with the corresponding reference. So sa results and discussion, yung figure nila, kinuha nila from the manual. So may brief description lang sila kung paano ginawa yung experiment. So does it have to be very long, no? At least, again, take note of the maximum 3-page number. So sa next page, they made the table. So nasa taas yung caption, pero mas magandang nasa baba rin yung caption ng table. Okay, so dito naman sa summary report, nag-discuss na sila ng data nila. So yung una na ginawa sa results and discussion, we've discussed the experiment. So next is discuss yung data. So what does the data show? And what are the assumptions? Ngayon, discussion naman. So na-discuss dito yung error. So yung mga assumptions. These assumptions play a role in identifying the possible sources of error in this experiment. So you know, results are limited. Factors may affect the accuracy. So ito yung last tonight nila, yung possible sources of error. So ito, this is just more discussion. And more graphs. Tingnan mo, lit masyado nung legend nila. Hirap basahin. Unless I zoom in a lot. Tapos pag nag-zoom in ako, lumalabo na siya. So while this is passable, it's not really recommended. Okay, so next, discussion. Kita nyo how they also discuss yung placement ng figures. So it's normally malapit din dun sa paragraph kung saan diniscuss yung figure mismo. Kaya siya medyo kalat-kalat. Hindi sila sama-sama sa isang corner. So for example, this paragraph here focuses on figure 3, while this paragraph here will focus on figure 4. So lastly, sa conclusion, ito yung conclusion niya. Again, a brief description of the experiment and its purpose, and a short summary of the key results and what they mean. And lastly, we have the references. Websites are a valid source of information, depending on the website, of course, kung reliable yan. So this is just a general way of how you can cite websites. So yung recommend ko actually, baka ginagamit nyo rin sa Physics 71 is ito, itong University Physics na OpenStax. This is how you would cite it. So tingnan nyo, kapag may website, the date that you access the website is also included. So, okay, that concludes the whole discussion, everything. So I hope this summary report workshop helped. Again, I will be available for any consultation that you may need. So if you have made it this far to the video, thank you for listening and good luck with your final requirement.